All right, everybody, here we go. Happy Wednesday. I like to start every cave with Happy Wednesday. Wherever you are in the world, Happy Wednesday. If you're just joining us, a couple of things we like to do before we start any conversation or cave. If you wouldn't mind updating your name so that we can see your first name and where you are in the world. Even though we're spotlighting here, Jamie and myself, if you ever want to take a look at the participant list just to see where people are in the world. All right, a few housekeeping things. Here's how this conversation is going to look today. So we're going to start by just a couple of introductions. I'll introduce Jamie and Caveday and myself. We'll talk about, we'll have our deep conversation around the science of music and what Jamie's company is, and have some Khruangbin, great, love Khruangbin. I saw them a couple months ago. And quick side note. So after we have our conversation, we'll have a few minutes for a Q&A. If you want to think of some questions while we're chatting, and then we're going to have a chance to have a deep dive, have a deep focus session rather. So we'll have a sprint, around a 45-minute-ish sprint. So where you get a chance to work on something that you want to make some progress on. If this is your first time in the cave, if you've never been to Caveday, if you're new to us, would you mind just throwing that in the chat so we can say hello to you? I recognize a lot of familiar faces, but if you're brand new to Caveday, Trisha, hi, welcome. So glad to have you here. So we'll explain how the deep work session, how the sprint works in a moment, but I think we should just go ahead and get started. So I'm going to do some introductions here. Let me just pull up my notes. Jamie, thanks so much for being here. Jamie
No
Pabst
problem. Thanks for having me.
Yes, Jamie is a DJ and founder and CEO of SpiritTune, who's devoted to exploring how music and sound scientifically impacts our brain and can help people reliably and accessibly address emotional health and deeper human needs on an everyday basis. She also loved DJing as a vivid example of music's ability to shift energy levels and the entire vibe of a space. And quick note on what Caveday is. Caveday is a company dedicated to improving people's relationship to work. We host daily focus sessions for members around the world. And one of the reasons why I was really excited to talk to Jamie was that I also have a background in music, which is something that's not really part of my everyday, but I studied music, and it's something that I always still have a deep excitement around. So Jamie, to kick us off, I'm hoping that you can just give like a Cliff Notes, a background on who you are, what makes you tick, and we'll start there.
Well, that is a tough question to do in probably less than a minute. I'm sure we're not going to spend the whole time on that, but thanks for having me, Molly. It's great to be here. I'm a big fan of Caveday since before the pandemic when things were in real life. And I see Jake is here too. Hey, Jake. Yeah, so who am I? What makes me tick? Well, I guess I'll preface this around music because that is such a huge part of who I am. And starting SpiritTune is really a representation of my true passion around not only how passionate I am around music and its ability to help us not only emotionally, but just in a fun capacity, how much it's part of our daily lives, but also around my passion to help people. It's a great thing to marry those two things together, and SpiritTune is kind of a representation of that. So to give you a little bit of background why SpiritTune came to be, it was really formed around my sister and her pursuit of music therapy when she went to college when I was still in 4th grade. So I learned about the clinical aspects of music and its, targeted and reliable ways to address neurologic disorders. And so, discovering that at a young age was really powerful to me in terms of using music for health purposes. And then secondly, my mom, who became deaf with me when she was pregnant with me, it's a condition called autosclerosis that can happen with massive hormonal shifts in the body. And so she lost her sense of hearing. And so I have, secondly, this really deep appreciation for our sense of sound and how it relates to our quality of life. So those two, really important life circumstances kind of have formed my values around music and sound's ability to help us on an everyday basis. And then kind of thirdly, in my prior career, struggling with mental health in the workplace, I felt like there wasn't anything accessible to me in terms of addressing my stress, anxiety in the moment. I know a lot of people are not alone with this phenomenon. And, back then we didn't call it mental health. It was just, I feel stressed and it's affecting my work and it's affecting my personal life. And what can I do in the moment? And so music felt like something I could turn to that could be accessible in our ears and could shift our emotions in the moment. And so those kind of three things have really formed the basis of SpiritTune and why I started SpiritTune in the first place.
So thanks for sharing that. I didn't, Jamie and I have never met in person. We kind of have similar circles, and I'm surprised we haven't met yet. But the story about your mother, that's thank you for sharing that. That's vulnerable, and I can understand how that would be really impactful in your life. Can you, I've shared with the Caveday community in a number of ways what SpiritTune is, and we hopefully will have a chance to do a little demo in a bit. But can you just give like just a little bit of a background on what SpiritTune is and its mission?
Sure. So at a high level, SpiritTune is a therapeutic music application. And what that means is, we're leveraging the science behind music, the clinical side of music therapy, and the kind of evidence-based research side of neuroscience, and combining those two disciplines together to not only create music, but also deliver it in an application that can help people reliably reach a variety of different everyday mental health needs, ranging from brain fog to focused attention, what we'll be focusing on today, stress, anxiety, even, down to kind of feelings of depression, fatigue. There's really a whole host of things that music can address, but, it's not random and it's not one size fits all. So that is kind of how we differentiate ourselves from, let's say, a creative platform where you might find your favorite music, such as we see on the chat right here, which is all phenomenal and great to listen to your favorite music. But when it comes to, reliable, targeted health outcomes, that's what SpiritTune's mission is to do. And so we really adhere to the science, the research, and the clinical underpinnings of music and music therapy to inform our musical compositions and the application of SpiritTune.
I love that. I have a lot of specific questions, but before we get to them, if you haven't already checked out SpiritTune, and if you want to use it during the Cave today, there's a link there, and you have a code Caveday Deep Dive as a way to access a free month. So that's something that you can check out, and maybe even before we go into our sprint, to see if it actually impacts your focus. And so I just have I'm going to throw up a poll for everybody here, just to get a sense of how we here in the group use music when it comes to deep work. So a lot of us are familiar with deep work. We're members of Caveday, and I'm just curious to know. So here's a couple of questions for you. First, do you listen to music while you do deep work? And if yes, what type of music? We'll give it just a couple more seconds here. A few more people left. Give it 5 more seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, so let's take a look here. So this is interesting. 83%, 15 out of 18 people who voted listen to music while doing deep work. It's interesting. I would answer that I do not. I fall into that category. More than one type on the second. That's, of course, it's more of a general question. And it looks like majority is ambient. No one answered classical. Fascinating. and some other. So that's so interesting. Jamie, do you have any responses to that before I ask some questions?
Yeah, I love those polls because you never know what you're going to get. But I have obviously done a lot of research and have kind of tapped into a lot of the various polls that exist. There's one I'll have to maybe share it with you guys, the link, but I think was done by an HR firm, and 83% of workers believe that music can help them during their day, which I think that was a poll that was done, I think about last year. And that really floored me. 83% of people already believe that music can help them while at work, which it feels like not so long ago. And it was the case in my former career. People thought if you were listening to music, you were having fun at work, right? Like not doing, not focusing on the task at hand. So this kind of behavioral shift is really pretty fascinating to me.
Something that I came across when preparing for our conversation was that when doing, there's all different kinds of work, right? We're gonna talk specifically around deep work, not more of the lower lift types of administrative task work, and talking more about deep focused work. And I saw somewhere that like dissonant and unfamiliar music was better than familiar music. Is that something that you can speak to?
Yeah, absolutely. So the main kind of thought around that anecdote is that with music that's your favorite music, that is very much music that your brain is going to get excited about and want to pay attention to. So, I saw somebody put Lizzo, whatever, like I definitely love Lizzo, but when I'm listening to Lizzo, my brain is focused on Lizzo and I want to like sing all the lyrics, do a little dance. But when it comes to focused attention, you don't want your brain focused on the music. You want basically enough auditory stimulation so that your brain is activated in a way, but not overly activated in the sense that it's distracting, meaning the music. We call it, from a neuroscience perspective, we call it event density. So a lot of pop music is has a high event density, meaning it's trying to grab your attention, right? And when it comes to focused attention, we want to be focused on the task at hand at work. So for SpiritTune, we focus on the elements of music, which if anyone has used SpiritTune in this group, you'll probably notice it's not, music you find in the wild. And we want that to be the case because we don't want your brain to pick up on the fact that, oh, hey, I know this song and now I'm going to pay attention to it and I'm going to get excited about that. So really when it comes to any type of health outcome, but especially deep work and focused attention, you just want your brain to be stimulated in just the right amount of way so that you're focused on the task at hand and not on the music itself.
I'd never heard that event density term. That's really helpful. Helpful for me, just me thinking about it, and also how we talk to, we get the question a lot when we have new people coming to Caveday, should we listen to music or not? And having that understanding, I think, is really helpful. I'm wondering why, if you have, if you have some understanding of why, 83% of people believe in this study believe that music will help. Why do some people benefit from having music, whether it's low event density or not? But for me, I really can't have anything, and I believe that's what I believe anyway. But why is music better for some people than others?
Yeah, so I think there's a few dimensions to that, question. I would say the main thing is that, our brains are highly sensitive to auditory stimuli, any kind of auditory stimuli, whether it's a little bit or a lot. And I guess, so one is music is not, again, one size fits all. So when we say the word music can help us, it's not any music, right? So it could be the fact that maybe you're listening to the wrong music because it's high in event density and your brain is distracted by the music and you can't focus. So that is a core reason why SpiritTune exists, is we are providing the right amount of auditory stimuli. So one is the content side of things. Are you listening to the right music that can help you? And secondly, there is a whole kind of spectrum of, let's say, people that range from, let's say, 2% of the population has anhedonia, which is basically our inability to feel pleasure. So music falls into this category. So if you have anhedonia, which is very rare, then you will not respond to music, or, let's say to a very limited degree. On the opposite side of this is hyperhedonia, which means you are very sensitive to music and kind of pleasurable aspects. And so the reality is all of us fall somewhere on this spectrum. It's usually not one extreme or the other. So some people are more sensitive to auditory stimuli than others. So just be aware of that. It's not a condition per se, but just be aware kind of the amount of auditory stimuli that affects you in certain ways.
I will say that when I was exploring with SpiritTune in the, when we were first chatting, it was really interesting I was able to keep it on while in a deep work sprint. And in my mind, classical music is what I love. That's what I studied. I love it. And I often try to put it on when I'm working, and it's so obvious. I love it. It's distracting. It's incredibly distracting. But you think classical music would be calming, but it's not always the case.
Well, I have a whole kind of I won't make several minutes on this, but on the topic of genre, it used to be said that, the Mozart effect, right? Classical music is great for studying, and that was actually debunked several years ago, in the sense that it's not, again, you'll probably hear me repetitively say this, it's not one size fits all, and it's not genre based. Actually, it's based on musical characteristics. So there is, for example, if you say you really love classical music, there's classical music that can be very distracting, but there is classical music based on the musical elements that are present in the composition that can be very soothing and could actually help you. But that's true of any genre. So that is why, we like to say we're genre agnostic, and we're just focused on the musical characteristics that cut across genres, rather than, everyone's favorite question for us is, what genre is it? And it's kind of the wrong question to ask, because it's not about a genre that works better or worse. It's about the musical characteristics that are agnostic of the genre, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense. I'm excited for people here to get into the app and explore and see what you mean by genre agnostic. Again, it's not really a term that I'm familiar. I don't use that language.
Yeah, that's historically how we label our music, right? We categorize it by genre.
Right.
Yeah.
I wonder if you can speak to, we talk about in the cave how we can sort of trick our brains into getting in a place of where flow is possible, right? Like removing distractions, setting time boundaries, really getting focused. So I wonder if can you use music to sort of manufacture or trick your brain into feeling a certain way? Like, I'm just going to leave it there. I could make that more leading, but I'm not going to.
So you use the word manufacture, meaning, can we create music, right? Or listen.
Can we trick our brains, rather? The question should really be, can we trick our brains into or can we trick our bodies or ourselves into feeling a certain way using music? Mm-hmm. Like, can we listen to something? I'll ask it in a more leading way. So, you're feeling heartache and you want to lean into that. I would imagine that there's a way that you can use music to trick your body into diving in more deeply. But I'm wanting it to be a little more scientific than, yes, I believe that's true, but.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So the answer is yes, whether you want to call it tricking your brain or, you know, sometimes I call it just like hacking your brain, right? It's like it's a hack that, you know, often people don't think about when it comes to a variety of different specific outcomes you're looking for, whether it's heartache, whether it's pain, whether it's time. You know, people say that when, you know, they listen to music, the time flies by, right? So really it's the answer is yes. And then the answer is also a bit complex in terms of, you know, all these musical characteristics that are present in a musical composition, from timbre, tonality, pitch range, pitch height, rhythm, rhythmic complexity, tempo, all of these characteristics work together in concert to elicit any type of response, whether that's, for example, pain, right? The really kind of core thing here is that music has a unique capacity to address the brain networks that underlie stress, emotion, pain, reward, so many things that relate to, you know, what your question pertains to. So let's say for pain, often when music is introduced, people, you know, this relates to working out, right? Why we can work out longer and harder often, because that's a pain kind of component, right? Our brain gets very anchored in the music. It can also relate to the release of neurotransmitters as well, you know, serotonin, oxytocin. So all of these things, music has the unique capacity to induce, and specifically when our brain is focused on a piece of music, I know this is getting away from focused attention at work, but let's say in the case of pain, we're focused on kind of the music and the way it's activating our brain, sometimes without knowing it, rather than the pain itself. So I'm just using pain as an example, but this could be translated into why time sometimes seems to pass faster with, let's say, a little more high tempo music, or why we are able to get to sleep faster because the music is regulating our nervous system. So decreasing our heart rate, our breath rate, et cetera, to help us relax. So I guess you can call that, tricking your brain, or, you know, hacking your brain in certain ways for specific outcomes.
I love what you say, you know, it induces, and I wonder if you can also say like it enhances, like if you're feeling pain, it could like, I wonder if it could enhance. Anyway, I wonder if you would be willing to share some, in whatever way that works. I'm going to give you sharing access here, and which will make you, I'm going to make you a co-host.
Okay.
And you should be able to share your screen. And if you just want to do audio, if you want to share, and let me know if you need to walk through. Thanks for hanging tight with us, everybody, while we do this.
We're going to do a little demo, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay,
great.
Cool. So I don't have a fully clean desktop, so just don't overly analyze my desktop, but here is SpiritTune for Mac OS. So we have a Mac OS option for you. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Let me actually, let me share the audio just in case we want to do a little sound clip. So just to give you a sense of how SpiritTune works, which is very different than kind of how you would discover music through other music streaming platforms. First, it's very personalized. Again, you've heard me say this probably 5 times at least now. It's not one size fits all when it comes to music for specific outcomes. And so SpiritTune really personalizes the music and the musical attributes based on a few different dimensions. One is your emotions, and we start with how you're currently feeling. And this is going to range from 4 core emotions based on a 2-dimensional affect plot, which means that fancy way of saying kind of low to high arousal and positive to negative affect. So this will give us 4 core emotions, from energized to anxious to lethargic to chill. And as you think about the core emotion, you can see that sub emotions pop out. So these are kind of the core emotions that one most often feels throughout their day. We're not limited to these emotions, of course, but in the spirit of simplicity, we try to keep the options at a palatable place. So
can I ask a question here? So
yeah.
if you know that you're about to go into a focused work session, right? You're wanting to access that. Do you still answer honestly, like where you're coming in? Like, I know I need to focus, but I'm feeling very energetic. Or would you suggest that you start with chill?
No, because part of the outcome that you are going to get as an end result is predicated on how you're feeling. So answering honestly is the best way to get an effective result. You'll see as we move through the prompts that we have the option to select workflow, which is already going to adapt the track for focused attention. So this is just one more filter with how we personalize the music based on an emotional, a target emotion of how you're currently feeling. So I'll get to kind of why that is once we go through the prompts. But yes, that's a great question. Definitely answer honestly, no matter what. If you're trying to get to sleep, trying to find work focus, trying to wake up, really try to tune in with how you're really feeling in the moment.
Awesome. Let's give it a go here.
Okay. So let's say, when we think about music for deeper human needs, a lot of SpiritTune and our users are actually, feeling typically anxious or kind of lethargic. So these are moments where we really need something to come in and help us. So maybe just for the spirit of this exercise, I hope you're not truly feeling this way, but let's say you're feeling a bit, let's say sad.
Cool.
The next thing we want to establish is how you would like to feel. So with this question, we're trying to, get you thinking about the target emotional state. And so we're going to remove the negative emotions and leave you with low arousal, which is chill, pleased, relaxed, content, peaceful, or high arousal, which ranges from any of these emotions here: determined, joyful, victorious, excited. So let's see, maybe we move to a joyful place.
Great.
And then lastly, we want to know, what is the activity that you're doing? So with kind of the high arousal state that we are moving to, we have 2 options available to us, and that is workflow, which is to optimize for focused attention, or waking up, which is to kind of optimize for busting out of morning brain fog and really getting you in a clear mindset for the day. Let me back up here. If we had chosen to go to chill, one of the chill states, let's say content, we would have 4 options. So that can range from waking up to workflow, which we had also available to us in the energized trajectory, but also you'll have winding down and sleep as an option for you.
Should we try workflow?
Yeah, let's do it. Let me go back if we want to go back to joyful.
Yeah.
And then let's choose workflow. And so those are the only 3 things we need to know at this stage, or this level of, let's say, personalization. We can get even more precise, but kind of in the spirit of simplicity, these 3 things that we've just asked you to tune into basically help us map out the musical elements that have been, scientifically researched and clinically informed to help you transition through your emotional state and also help you reach this targeted goal or activity. So in this case, we kind of chose sad to joyful in the workflow category. So all of the, and then we press play. So essentially what's going to happen is a music therapy principle at work called the ISO principle that says to more effectively transition you to where you want to be emotionally, we must first meet you where you're at. And so the music is going to start to kind of mimic your physiological state. So if you are truly feeling kind of in this low arousal, low negative affect state, it's going to meet you there, which may not feel pleasant, but it's going to embrace you just as a friend or a therapist might embrace you where you are. And then the musical elements will shift to take you kind of on your journey to where you would like to be going. So that is how we personalize the music based on your unique needs. Of course, this is a demo, so yeah. So absolutely, just keep in mind, this may not be your actual emotional state. So
totally. But
put
just,
yourself in that mindset if you're feeling a little bit down in the dumps, and want to find focused attention in a more joyful state. Here's one of the sample tracks you may hear. So I'll do maybe we'll go through the transition, which should take like 30 seconds, maybe do a minute.
Perfect. Yeah.
Let's 45
let's
seconds.
Just like 30 seconds ish. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool. Interesting. That's really cool. I mean, you can really, oh, you're on mute.
Oh, yeah, just obviously that probably wasn't enough. You can hear the transition there, but obviously these tracks last longer to kind of really kind of evolve the track in your brain in a way that continually helps you to get to the target state over time.
Totally. Yeah. And just for this exploration, I think that gives at least me a good idea of, this is why this is, I what I've been exploring with SpiritTune. I didn't realize this really, but it's so interesting to hear that it's meeting you, like it's hugging you where you are. That's a good question, Danielle. How long are the tracks typically?
Yeah, so we decided, for us anyway, most of our tracks are around 10 minutes. We basically decided that is a good duration of time because when it comes to a physiological response, there's two dimensions. One is the amount of time it takes for the track to transition, which, one of the benefits of music is that it's such a fast conductor of emotion. You can feel the shift almost quickly. So we're usually trying to get you to feel, your target state within 1 minute of time, but the track actually will evolve and persist for about 10 minutes of time. Again, this is where our musical kind of sensitivity comes into play because everyone's different. Some people feel like they're, locked and loaded in 3 minutes. Some people can take 14 minutes or longer. But we felt 10 minutes was a great kind of happy medium to establish what we call our transition track, which is the one you just heard. And that will essentially, increase the likelihood of your body's physiological response, which is kind of our breath rate, our heart rate that respond to auditory stimuli through the process of neural entrainment to kind of catch up. So you can feel an effect very quickly, but in terms of our physiological response, it can often take several minutes. So that 10-minute track is a transition track to kind of establish the target state. Then it's met with another 10-minute track, which we call a sustaining track, to kind of further along that target state you're looking for. And the music will actually continue indefinitely until you say stop or decide to go in a new kind of emotional transition.
It's really awesome. I love, I encourage you. This is not meant to be a plug, but I'm personally plugging it because I think it's just really fascinating. So if it's something you want to try during our sprint in a little bit, and you have the links to do that. So in interest of time, I'm going to ask just a couple of our like rapid fire standard questions. They're not super rapid fire. I won't get to all of them, but I share these with you in advance. So hopefully we can just get through a couple of them and then we'll open it up to the group. So Jamie, what do you think is your biggest distraction?
Honestly, my biggest oh geez, there's so many, but okay, in the spirit of rapid fire, noise is a big distraction, which is different than music.
Yes. Yep. I totally hear that. Who's influenced your work the most, or who's someone that comes to mind when I ask that question, and have you told them?
Yes, I love this question because it's very clear in my mind. I mean, a variety of people have influenced my work, but in terms of kind of the catalyst for SpiritTune, when I was really on the edge of, is this something I want to do? It was Dr. Oliver Sacks who I picked up the book called Musicophilia, which was on the bestseller table at Barnes and Noble, and I just had to grab it, and I finished it in a day or two, and it was really that moment where I was like, this is too powerful to not start working on, in terms of these kind of anecdotes that he had. And he's kind of one of the foremost, for anyone who doesn't know him or his work, he's kind of one of the foremost neurologists that really was a pioneer in terms of his beliefs and his work on music and the brain. And he was very vocal about it. He's a very kind of funny character. And so I really just like fell in love with his writings, and kind of as I researched more about him, who he was as a person, in terms of have I told him. So when I thought about how I was going to start SpiritTune, I obviously wanted to reach out to the academics and researchers first. So I crafted an email, sent it off to him, which I still have. And, it was a few days, he didn't respond. And there was another music therapist working at NYU who happened to, have worked alongside him. And she said, he's clinically ill with cancer in the hospital, and it's not looking good. So the chances are he may not respond to you. But she said, I can connect you to one of his partners he's worked with alongside him for 35 years, Conchetta Tomeno. And within a couple of weeks, I was in her office, telling her about this idea I had, and was it plausible, and can she help? And so I feel like we have tapped into some of Dr. Oliver Sacks's brain through Connie's work, although Connie is an amazing pioneer in music therapy in and of her own right. But I still have that email that, is a strong reminder of kind of our early days of jumping off the deep end of, building something we want to do, and reaching out to people that inspire us.
Yeah, and just going for it. That's an excellent story. And if you haven't read that book, Musicophilia, and if you're interested, I highly recommend it. Two last questions. Is there a piece of content you've been recommending lately? A book, podcast, show, movie? Doesn't have to be professional, could be fun.
Yes, although a lot of my reading recently are under two umbrellas. One is kind of mental health, and one is pregnancy related, because I am in my third trimester of pregnancy. So I've been doing a lot of mental preparation for that. So if anyone here is in that state of mind, the fourth trimester I'm reading currently. And in terms of mental health, a doctor I deeply respect, Dr. Ellen Vora, recently released her book called The Anatomy of Anxiety. And it's really fantastic. And she's just a great person and therapist in her own right. So I would highly recommend both.
Excellent. I love the fourth trimester. I agree. Okay, last question. Do you eat breakfast? And if yes, did you have breakfast today? And then what was it? So that's a three-part question.
Wait, the first, did I have breakfast?
Do you,
If so,
yes.
what was it?
Like, do you eat breakfast?
Always.
Did you today? And what was it? Always. Okay.
Always.
So what did you have for breakfast today?
So it was pretty simple. It was, I like to go light on breakfast, at least weekday breakfast. So kashi cereal with blackberries and strawberries. So I try to put in a fresh fruit in there with oat milk. And that's usually my go-to during the work days. It's quick, it's easy, it's satisfying, and it's light.
Love it. Oh, I'm hungry. Thank you for answering those questions. I'm going to open it up to the group. If there's any questions that you have before we dive into our deep work sprint. You answered Danielle's question. I'm just going to see if there are other. Oh, here's a question here from Eloise. How do you feel you differ from apps like Brain.fm or Focus at Will?
Awesome question. So in terms of, I would say we are definitely in the same vein in terms of using music for targeted outcomes. So I'll start with that. In terms of how we differ, from my perspective, those apps are a bit one-dimensional in terms of kind of clicking a button for focus, and it's more of a soundscape. Well, in the case of Brain FM, it's more of a soundscape that kind of evolves. At Brain FM, it's kind of shorter tracks, some which are, I believe, proprietary, some which are kind of licensed music that you can also find in the wild. With SpiritTune, kind of our differentiating factor is more kind of two dimensions. One is the emotional component, which relates to kind of the health and targeted activity component. So rather than saying just music for focus, it's music, for what kind of emotional state you want to be in with respect to focus. And so that really, those nuances, we believe matter, the personalization of the musical elements. And in the case of SpiritTune versus Brain FM, we have a bit more what I call musicality, meaning the musical elements really have the capacity to shift emotion versus a soundscape, which can provide a pleasant auditory stimuli, but may fall a bit short in terms of the emotional component. So that's, let's say at a high level, kind of how I feel we differentiate from the other two.
Awesome, thank you for clarifying. We've used Brain.fm and fans of them, but it's exciting to explore SpiritTune too. And Tracy just has a quick clarifying question, and then we'll have Andrea's question, and then we'll start our deep work sprint. So Tracy's just asking for some clarity. Even though it says 9 minutes on a track, it will just keep going, right?
Yes. Yeah. So the tracks themselves will lead in after one 9 to 10 minute track is complete. Then another track will be introduced with. It'll be a different style, but it will have similar musical characteristics that meet kind of our scientific requirement for where you've specifically stated you want to go emotionally. So good question, and it will continue on until you stop it.
So we're basically out of time, but I just want to get to this last question here. If we can do it quick answer. Andrea asks, do you have music for physical pain and for different levels of pain?
Yeah, so the short answer is we don't have that precision, let's say, of fidelity yet in terms of like the prompt, right? Saying, as you saw, kind of the different emotional prompts, we don't have an option specifically for pain itself. I think as we continue down our journey with increased personalization, that is one area we want to focus on. However, I will say that it's not that our music can't address pain and that people don't use it for pain. So if I, for example, wanted to address pain, I would most likely still answer your question honestly in terms of where you're at emotionally currently, but in terms of where you'd like to go, typically I would suggest the winding down category with one of the lower valence options from chill, pleased, content, etc. So that might be a bit ambiguous as you navigate those prompts, because it doesn't specifically say pain. But many folks do use SpiritTune for, grief, pain of some sort. So that is what I would suggest if you or a loved one are trying to use SpiritTune for pain.
I love that. Thank you for answering. All right, so we're gonna get going into our cave in a moment. I'm just sharing the link one more time. If you do want to explore this specific link, will give you access for a free month of SpiritTune and use Caveday Deep Dive. Oh, excellent, great, Nicole. I'm going to stop recording while we go into the cave. All right, everybody, welcome back. How did it go? What are you feeling good about? If you use SpiritTune, what felt different, if anything? I'll make it so you can come off of mute, or you can just share in the chat. If anyone has thoughts. Jamie, how did it go for you?
Well, I'm biased, but I do love, one, SpiritTune definitely helps me in every aspect of my emotional and focused parts of my day. But I will say, on kind of the Caveday side of things, it was nice to work kind of in unison with everyone, feeling like we were all kind of heads down getting our own respective work done. So in a virtual world, when sometimes we're isolated in our home office, it was nice to kind of have both music as a source of stimuli, but also kind of the feeling of collective productivity.
Yeah, it's so simple, how community can really, even if you're across the world, how community can give that feeling of like a connected power. We always talk about how Caveday, it almost feels like the room is pulsing, like your head's down, like you're breathing, and you come back up for a breath and then you go back in. And it's this pulsing feeling, even if they're longer stretches of time. But I'm just going to read out some things here. Let's see. Trisha says, loved it first time using it and have always felt that music would be distracting, but it really wasn't. Yeah, great. I love that, Trisha. Vera, played with the app and changed energy mood 3 times. Awesome. Love the names of the tunes. Chelsea says, I got in the zone and feel much calmer now. Great. Eloise, I liked it. I can definitely see the musicality compared to other apps, and I liked that what it wasn't distracting at all. Awesome. Vera, synced my writing rhythm with the music. Cool. Andrea says, I got really focused and felt energized. At first, the music felt a little distracting, but that was probably the case because I'm so interested in in what the app is doing. Excellent. Heather, I caught myself bobbing along bobbing along, which means I was energized. And Jake says, I forgot I was here. Awesome. Cool. I'll share that I started, my journey was, I shared that I was tense and I wanted to get to peaceful. And I could feel myself getting there. I think I've just got a kind of tense feeling all around. So I'm excited to play with it a little more. Jamie, this is kind of amazing. Agreed.
Yeah, no, I love hearing all the feedback. Thank you guys for trying it out. And I will say it sometimes takes a few tries just to feel your own self out. Let's see, who was it that said they changed emotions 3 times?
Vera,
sometimes just tuning into where you are as related to kind of feeling out what the energized section feels like versus the chill, because some folks say, they started using energized in the workflow category, but they actually realized that chill was more for them. So kind of exploring those levels of energy. So sometimes it takes a few tries to really get tuned in to both yourself and the kind of musical flow. So keep giving it a whirl, but I love all of the different varieties of feedback. So thank you all.
Yeah, well, thank you all for being here too. I'm just going to leave lastly, if you use Instagram, you can follow along SpiritTune there. And you can also find Jamie via SpiritTune as well, if you want to find out more about her. Thank you, Jamie, for being here. Thanks for spending 90 minutes with us.
Of course,
I know that I'm feeling
Thank
more calm. I feel calm, educated, and like I got some work done, which in 90 minutes, that's a real win.
I'll take it, coming off a holiday weekend and everything.
Exactly.
So Yeah, no, thank you for having me, Molly. It's been awesome. And thank you everyone for joining, giving SpiritTune a try. And I hope it helped your productivity. So keep with it.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to end for the whole